It's been a really great reading year for me so far, my friends. So join me today while we take a quick look back over the first 4 months of the year. Hello, lovely bookworms. Kim here, and welcome on back to Bookworm Buzz. And in this video, I'm going to be taking a look at the books from the first 4 months, so from January to April. What I am going to do is I am going to very quickly run through those 31 books. I am not going to read blurbs to you. I'm not going to summarize plots because we will be here all day if I do that. So what I intend to do is just to put the cover up onto the screen so that you can familiarize yourself with the book, and then I will tell you what sort of genre it fell into, and I will also tell you what star rating I gave the book. Look, now and then I may have something small to say about a specific book if something jumps out at me, but I'm really not going to spend a lot of time on each of these books. So on that note, let's kick things off. First up, my friends, and the very first book that I finished in 2025 was indeed a horror novel. Now, that comes as a bit of a surprise because I am not the hugest horror genre fan, but I must be honest, I've actually read quite a few horrors this year and I've loved most of them. So this one is called Maeve Fly. The author is CJ Lead. I really enjoyed this one. I wasn't quite prepared for how dark and twisted it got, but you guys know me, I enjoy dark and twisted, and so this one was a great read. I gave this one 4 stars. Next up was yet another horror novel. I can't actually believe that I started 2025 with 2 horror novels. But anyway, this was one that I had heard so much about. This one is called The Eyes Are the Best Part, and the author is Monica Kim. Guys, I absolutely loved this book. Again, this one was very dark. It was very twisty. And, well, I shouldn't say twisty in terms of the twists that you find in thrillers. Let me rather say it was very dark and twisted, as in messed up. And yes, as the name suggests, there is literally the concept of eating eyeballs in this novel. Be that as it may, I loved it and I gave this one 5 stars. Then, can you believe I had another 5-star read? I'm actually not surprised because this author is my absolute top favorite. I love everything she writes, and so this was The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. It was a 5-star read for me, you guys. It was a thriller. I absolutely loved it. If you are thinking of picking this one up, just definitely check the trigger warnings if you are someone who is easily triggered. I am not. I can go very dark and twisty and twisted, and I don't need to read trigger warnings, but just for you guys, for those of you who might be sensitive, this one has issues of rape, sexual violence, physical violence, trauma, whatever. It's in this book, but I absolutely loved it. The next book that I finished was the book of Witching by C.J. Cook. Now, again, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. Some people didn't. I know it was getting very mixed reviews, but I enjoyed it. This one straddled a few genres. It was sort of historical fiction. It was fantasy. It was witches, and I really enjoyed it. I gave this one 4 stars. Next up is this one. This is What Lies in the Woods by Kate Alice Marshall. This was a very popular thriller book that lots of people loved. I was lukewarm about this one. I was only okay with it. I did enjoy it. I did find it somewhat fun. I gave this one 3.5 stars. Then next up we have Sleep Tight, which is the only 2-star read that I had in January. The author is J.H. Marquardt. Now, unfortunately, this one just didn't work for me. I would actually classify this one as a thriller/crime novel. People have classified this one as a horror, and if you check on Goodreads, people say it's a horror. I didn't find it to be a horror. Like I say, I would classify it differently. This book had me so hooked in the first 50 pages. It was dark and it was interesting and it was fascinating, and then unfortunately from there it just went downhill and I didn't really enjoy this one. And then the last book that I finished in January was Darling Girls by Sally Hepworth. Lots of people once again loved this one. I didn't. I was middle of the road. It's a thriller/mystery novel. It's about 3 sisters who are not sisters by blood, but they are basically in a foster home with an awful foster mother. And yeah, the story goes from there. I gave this one 3 stars. And then the first book that I read in the month of February was this one called We Love the Nightlife by Rachel Collar Croft. This was the first book that I read by this author, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. It was fun. It was slightly unhinged. I loved the female relationships. And yes, this one is indeed, as you can see probably from the cover, it is a vampire type story. It's got a little bit of thriller sort of elements to it, a little bit of paranormal, but I really loved it. I gave it 4 stars. Next up is probably the shortest book that I've read this year, but again, I absolutely loved this one. This one was called The Night Guest, and the author is Hilde Knutsdotter. I've probably butchered that surname, but anyway, like I say, this was a fairly, I don't want to say straightforward. It was a fairly short novel. I read it in one sitting. I gave it 4 stars. It is a psychological thriller / mystery, and it's got some really good twists towards the end. I loved this one. I thought it was a very entertaining, and yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of novellas. I don't actually read novellas. So like I say, this one will probably be the shortest one that I will read this year, but it's definitely worth a go if it appeals to you guys. Next up is another Sally Hepworth novel, and again, I gave this one 3 stars. This one is called The Younger Wife. It's a thriller / mystery. You guys will remember a few books back I mentioned that I gave one of her books 3 stars, and this was another one that I gave 3 stars. So clearly this author is just sort of middle of the range for me. I do find her writing style can be a little bit basic, and the stories can sometimes be a little bit basic. There's nothing really drastically different with them specifically, but I enjoy them. A 3-star review is not a bad review, and so this one was another one that was just okay for me. And then I picked up Come With Me by Robert Melfi. I did not expect to love this one as much as I did. I didn't really know what to expect with this one. I know it is or has been said to fall in the horror genre, and I'm a little bit on the fence about that. I did not think that this one read 100% like horror. Yes, there are some supernatural elements to it, but there are much more sort of thrillerish type of elements to it. And oh, my friends, I fell in love with it. It came as such a surprise. Loved everything about it and awarded this one 5 stars. Then a book that was getting huge amounts of hype, which in all honesty can sometimes be a bad thing because then I think I build the book up so much in my head. But this one is called Someone in the Attic, and the author is Andrea Mara. It got off to a cracking start. Oh my gosh, this book has a fantastic opening chapter. Let me just say that. It was so creepy. It was so eerie. It involved a woman lying in a bath, having a chilled out time. I even think she's got a glass of wine next to her. Her eyes are closed. She's having a relax. And then in the background and down the passage, you see an intruder drop down from inside the ceiling. Oh, tell me that doesn't sound amazing. So I was hooked. I was totally hooked by the opening chapter, and then didn't love it. Didn't love it. This whole story didn't work for me. I was bored. I wasn't really invested. And anyway, I gave it 2 stars. It is a mystery / suspense / thriller novel, but it wasn't very thrilling. And so I had to give it 2 stars. Now, let me just say that I am not a reader who tends to award 1 stars to books. There are a few reasons for that. Firstly, if I can see a book is going to be 1 star, then I normally DNF it. Like, I can normally tell by the halfway point if I'm hating a book that much, then I DNF it. The second reason is 1-star reviews are really difficult for me because I know how much work and time and effort an author put into writing that book. And they feel passionate about it. It's like their child. They love it. And so it always feels a little bit uncomfortable to me to give a 1-star review. That said, I gave this book, Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison, 1 star. I just couldn't with this book. I don't know why I didn't DNF it, but the strange thing is I might be turning a corner in terms of my 1-star reviews, because I have given a total of, I'm just thinking, you guys, I think it's 3. I think I have 3 books now on Goodreads that I have given 1 stars to in this year, and I don't think that has ever happened before. Anyway, this one didn't work for me. This one was a cult story. I thought I was going to love it, but it went down the route of a satanic cult. There was a whole lot of praising the devil and Satan worshipping, and then a whole lot of just total bullshit things, for lack of a better word, that were going on, and I just didn't enjoy it. It was complete nonsense, and I gave it 1 star. And then I read another thriller slash mystery novel. This is another one that is fairly popular. A lot of people love this one, and I was middle of the road with it. This one is Night Watching by Tracy Sierra. It was okay. It was okay. I mean, it started off in a way that I was really enjoying it, and I thought the story was going in a certain direction. And if it had gone in that direction, I actually think I would have loved it. But it didn't. What I thought was going to happen didn't happen, and this just became a sort of run-of-the-mill thriller for me, and so it was a 3-star read. And then we have another book that was actually fairly short as well. Not as short as the other one that I discussed earlier, but also not a specifically long read. This is a fairly new release. It was published in 2025. This is Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fato. I heard about this one, and it sounded so up my alley because it sounded so dark and messed up, and so I couldn't help but pick it up. This one is described as historical fiction, also horror, also thriller. I really enjoyed this one. It does contain a very messed up lead female character. There's quite a bit of violence actually in this book. And overall, I'm okay with all of those things. In fact, dark and messed up lead characters are my jam. But this one was sort of, again, a middle of the road for me. It was 3 stars just because it wasn't specifically memorable. I did enjoy it, but it's not one that's going to stick with me. And it wasn't one that I was absolutely floored by. And so, yep, 3 stars for this one. Then moving on to a horror novel that just rocked my world. This book, I didn't expect to love it so much. I had heard really good things about it, but man, this one just did it for me. This one is Incidents Around the House by Shs Memoir. 5 stars. 5 big, resounding, positive, thumbs up stars from me. I loved this one. And let me tell you, I actually read this one with my eyeballs while also listening to the audiobook, which I do very often. And I thought the audio version was fantastic. The little girl in this story who sees other mommy always coming out of her cupboard in her bedroom, okay, need I say more? Her voice in the audiobook was so good because it actually sounded like a child. So you had all the different characters in the audiobook really sounding like the different characters. I think they were all narrated by different audiobook narrators. And the narrator who did the little girl's voice really did it well. At first I wasn't 100% convinced because it did actually take some time for me to get used to the voices and so on. But once I did, I absolutely loved this one. It was so freaky. Friends, seriously, I don't get easily creeped out, I don't think. And this book creeped the daylights out of me. There were certain scenes that I can still remember now, and I remember as I was reading, the hairs on my arms, I think it was both arms, were literally standing on end. This was such a great book. I think it's going to be in my top 5 for the year, but yeah, 5 big stars from me. I absolutely loved it. Then we go back to my favorite genre, thrillers and mysteries, and this is one by Ashley Flowers. This one is called All Good People Here. I really enjoyed this one. I just thought this was a solid thriller novel. I gave it 4 stars. I enjoyed the story. I enjoyed the pace. I enjoyed the characters. Nothing specifically mind-blowingly brilliant. I mean, obviously, which is why I didn't give it 5 stars. But it really was entertaining enough that it deserves the 4 stars that I gave it. And sorry, bookworms, I did actually forget to mention that I have moved on to the books that I read in March now. I mean, nothing really turns on that, but I was hoping to just tell you which ones I had done in January, Feb, March, and April. So I am now talking about books that I read in March, and the very first book that I read in March was Someone in the Attic. So I'm well into March now in terms of the books I'm telling you about, but that's okay. The next book that I finished, which I finished towards the middle to end of March, was Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. Now, this is a book that is really splitting the crowds, and Riley Sager seems to be an author that is splitting the crowds. Like, so many people have loved some of his books and then absolutely hated other books. This book is one that doesn't tend to get a lot of love, but man alive, I enjoyed this one so much. I gave it 4 stars, As always, Riley Sager writes in the sort of thriller, mystery thriller genre, and I was all for it with this one. I loved the parts of the stories going back in time to when this main lead male protagonist was younger. Him and his best friend were camping out in the garden in a tent. When he woke up in the bed in the morning, the tent had been slit and his best friend was missing. And I actually really enjoyed this book, even though some other people haven't. Actually, thinking about it, this is one of my favorite Riley Sager books. And so, yep, 4 stars for this one. And then yet another thriller mystery novel. Now, this one is a very popular book, but it didn't hit the mark for me. This is The Return of Ellie Black by Emiko Jean. This was unfortunately a 2-star read for me. I'm not 100% sure why I didn't love this one. It just didn't really work for me. I found the story slow, and then it did also go down some routes that I don't tend to generally enjoy in books and in thrillers specifically. And so, yeah, I'm not going to say more than that. I mean, if it appeals to you, you know, reading is so subjective, give it a try. But for me, no, this one just didn't work, and it was 2 stars. And then moving on to the books that I read and finished in April. This was also the month that I started reading from the fantasy genre. As many of you know, fantasy is very new to me. In fact, before this year and before a couple of months ago, I had never in my whole life read a romantasy book. And I had only read a few sort of adult fantasy novels, and those were when I was much younger. I was probably in my very late teens or early 20s when I read those. So I consider myself a fantasy genre complete novice. I started reading some fantasy novels in April, and the first one that I picked up because it came so highly recommended was this one called Warbreaker by none other than Brandon Sanderson. This one, as I've already said, was a highly recommended novel. So many people told me that if I'm a novice and just trying to start with the genre, that I should start with this one. I enjoyed it, my friends, but it didn't blow my hair back completely. So I awarded 3 stars. In retrospect, it's probably more of 3.5 stars, but according to my notes and according to Goodreads, it was a 3-star rating from me. I enjoyed it. I just found it was maybe a little bit longer than it needed to be. And although I was taken with certain parts of the story, there were others that maybe dragged a little bit. And maybe it just didn't go as fantasy maybe as I would have liked. Like, I'm starting to realize I'm a fantasy reader who really likes to go to funny creatures, funny lands, funny creatures. Give me gigantic scorpions, give me dragons, give me vampires. And this book obviously didn't do that. But I'm not upset that I read it. You know, because I'm a novice, I'm still trying to find my way. I'm still trying to find exactly what it is that I like and don't like in fantasies. And this one was a good fantasy. I'm not saying it wasn't, but it didn't completely blow me away. And so I did settle on 3 stars. The next book is a book that is getting rave reviews from everybody. It's a fantasy book. It is called Blood Over Bright Haven, and the author is M.L. Wang. I must be the only person that I know that has awarded this book 2 stars. Again, it is a fantasy novel, and I just didn't like it. I just didn't like it. There was just aspects of the story that didn't work for me. Now, let me say this. This book is making a lot of people very happy. So if you are wanting to read it, or you have heard about it and you've had it on your TBR and now you're thinking, oh no, don't let me put you off because everybody is giving this book 5 stars. I'm the only person who isn't. And I'm giving it 2 stars. I didn't like it, my friends. It had, in fairness, it had one of the best opening chapters that I have read all year in any book from any genre. I was so hooked after the opening chapter. In fact, the opening chapter was very emotional. It was packed with action, packed with fantasy, emotional elements. I was even getting teary when I read the first chapter. And I remember turning to my husband and saying, oh my word, this is going to be a 5-star read. And then it's ended on 2 stars. I couldn't help it. It didn't work for me. I didn't like it. I felt that the author was lecturing to us. She had her topics that she was trying to make a point about. And I just felt like I was a a school child sitting in a classroom being lectured to, and it just didn't work for me. Let's just move on from there. Then moving on to a fantasy / romantasy novel that everybody is going crazy about. And now that I've read it, I understand the hype. This is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Yes, 4.5 stars from me. I loved it. I loved this one. Now, this is a book that had the type of things that I like. Look, in an ideal world, I would really prefer for the characters to be a little bit older, but I am coming to appreciate that in fantasy novels, and especially romantasy, the characters are often younger. Violet, the main character in this book, is 19 or 20 when the book starts. So it's not like she's very junior. So I was actually okay with it. But what I loved is you have a school, you have a Dragon Riders Academy, you have all sorts of trials and tests and tribulations, you have dragons. I love me some dragons. And yes, I was okay with the romance. Look guys, I'm not someone who needs romance in my books, and I most definitely don't need spice. I am just past that age now where spice and smut and all of that does not really appeal to me. But the romance in this book was really actually fine. There were only a couple of spicy scenes. The romance, like I say, actually developed at a nice pace. So I was fine with it. And it wasn't the main focus of the story. So overall, I loved this one. 4.5 stars. Then moving on to a fantasy novel that I fell hopelessly in love with, and I awarded 5 stars. It's fantasy, but more specifically military fantasy, and this one is called The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. It was really fantastic. This book had so many different elements to it. But you do need to be okay with war type stories and violence, because although this book starts off in a school, so again we have a school setting, it's not dragons or anything like that, but it's like a military academy. Rin, the main character, had to pass some seriously difficult exams to get into this academy. She gets there, she's trained, but then the book moves on. Like, she moves out of the academy. She's 14 when the book starts, but she grows up a little bit through the story. And she moves into the world and out of the academy. And when that happens, the book becomes quite adult. So this is definitely an adult fantasy novel. It's a series actually of 3 books. And I believe that the violence and the military aspects ramp up as the series progresses. And my friends, guess what? No romance. No smut, no spice. Yes, yes, yes. I was there for it. Gave this one 5 stars. Wow, I actually read a lot of books in April. That is coming back to me now that I read a lot of books. So let me catch a move on. So in sticking with the fantasy theme, I then read Stormfront, which is by Jim Butcher. This is an urban fantasy book. It's also an urban fantasy series. It's about Harry Dresden. Harry Dresden is a wizard. He's a modern day wizard. He operates out of Chicago. I gave this book 3.5 stars. I really did enjoy it. It read like a detective novel, but with some fantasy aspects. There were giant scorpions, there were vampires, all sorts of things that I enjoy. And so, yeah, this one was a good start to the series. I have been told that the series continues to get better and better. So the first 2, 3, 4 books are not great. Apparently, there are like 16 books in the series. But as you get further along, the books get better and better. And yeah, so I am looking forward to carrying on with this full series. And then, is there a person on this planet that has not read this book? A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Great book, great book. I loved it. 4 stars. Again, it's a fantasy / romantasy, probably aimed more at not young adult, actually new adult and adults. I really enjoyed it. It was a solid 4 stars for me, just because this book was like a tale of 2 halves. The first half I wasn't crazy about. I found it a little bit innocent and flowery, but then I really loved the second half. And so I settled on 4 stars for this one. And I have in fact bought the entire series, and I will be reading the entire series. And then moving on, sticking with the Harry Dresden series, which I have already mentioned. This is book number 2 in the series. This is called Full Moon, again by Jim Butcher. This one I did not like. I gave this one 2 stars. Again, it's urban fantasy, so all the books in this series are urban fantasy, but this one didn't work for me. I didn't like this one as much as the first one. I mean, by the end of this book, I was sort of just skim reading through it because I just couldn't care. I had lost interest. In summary, the book is about werewolves, and that sounds great on the surface, but I just didn't enjoy it. There wasn't enough for me to bond with. There wasn't enough, this sounds strange because I'm going to say there wasn't enough action. It sounds strange to say that because there was action, but it just didn't grip me. There was too much, it was just too much interacting, talking, this type of werewolf, talking to this person, this werewolf interacting with that werewolf, and that was the other problem. There were like 4 or 5 different types of werewolves in the story, and they were all very distinct. It wasn't for me. Moving on. Okay, friends, we are still in April, and I still have 5 books left to talk to you about. So I hope this video is interesting and that you're not getting bored, but let's move along. The next book I read was Shs Memoir. It's part 1. I gave it 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. I'm someone who loves reading celebrity memoirs, and so this one was really one that I thoroughly enjoyed. 4 stars, not 5 stars, just because I found that probably the first third of this book very, very detailed, overly detailed. It was also relating to a time when I wasn't even born yet, so all the name dropping was a little bit lost on me. But for two-thirds of this novel, I was really engrossed. Well, I shouldn't say novel, of this memoir. I was really engrossed, was loving learning everything about Sh's life, how she met Sunny, and everything around all of that. And so yes, my friends, I settled on 4 stars. Then at this juncture, I may as well tell you about the next celebrity memoir that I read, and this was Paris. So this is Paris Hilton's memoir. I wanted to read this book because I had heard that this book goes very dark, let's say dark, that things happened to Paris in her childhood and in her earlier years that she really wanted to speak about in this memoir, and she has apparently been really fundamental in exposing a really abusive schooling system in the US. And more than that, I'm not going to say, because you really should read this book. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I gave this one 4.5 stars. I mean, some of the things that went on, I was shocked. I couldn't actually believe that this was a memoir. So if you are thinking that this is just a memoir about a ditzy blonde running around Hollywood spending all her parents' money, I can tell you now that it isn't, and it goes much darker than that, and I do recommend it. 4.5 stars. Then we have another mystery thriller. This is Murder Road by Simone St. James. This is another author that I have read a lot from, and I don't think I've ever given a 5 star. Simone St. James always appeals to me because she writes thriller books, but she pulls in elements of the paranormal, and I really enjoy that in my thriller books. I know that's not for everybody, but it is for me, and I thoroughly enjoy it. So I keep picking up her books, but they always sort of middle of the range for me. So they're normally between 3 and 4 stars. This one I awarded 3 stars to. It was good. I mean, there was no major issues with it. It just wasn't mind-blowing, but yeah, middle of the road for me, so 3 stars. Only 2 books left to discuss with you, my friends, so we are nearly done. The next 2 that I'm going to discuss with you are both thrillers. The first one I would call sort of more of a psychological thriller. This one is called Finding Sophie by Imran Mahmood. It's a psychological thriller, but it also has aspects of being a legal thriller as well. It was a little bit more of an emotional read than you sometimes tend to get with thrillers, just because it's about 2 parents whose teenage daughter, she's in her late teens, I think she's like 16 or 17, she goes missing, and you actually feel and see the grief and the pain that these parents are going through. I did enjoy this one. I really loved the legal paragraphs because they were just, not paragraphs, the legal chapters, because they were just slotted in here and there, and you couldn't really work out why are they there, what's the point of them. So your mind is telling you, yep, something clearly happened for these people to now be in a courtroom, but what and how, you don't know. And so I really enjoyed that aspect of this book. And so for me, it was a solid 4 stars. It was very entertaining. Like I say, a little bit psychological, a little bit emotional, and definitely a little bit legal. And so this one does get a thumbs up from me. And then the last book to share with you in today's video is this one called My Darling Girls. And I am so happy that we are finishing off with a 5 star. So it's My Darling Girls by Jennifer McMahon. Again, it's a thriller with a paranormal aspect. I didn't really know what to expect going into this one. And oh gosh, it was so good. 5 stars, my friends, 5 stars. It went down a route that I can see some people not enjoying or not being happy with. I could see some people possibly even finishing this book saying, oh my God, what a bunch of rubbish. Not for me. I thought it was so entertaining, and the ending, oh my gosh, the ending just leaves you with so many thoughts in your head, wondering like the ending is not vague. I don't think I would describe the ending as vague, but it just left all sorts of possibilities, and I was here for it. I gave it 5 big resounding stars. I really loved this one. And yeah, my friends, that wraps up all the books that I read in the first 4 months of the year. Please give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. It's so nice for me to know that I'm making content that you guys want to see. So if you enjoyed it, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed and you're checking me out for the first time, please subscribe. It costs you nothing, guys. It's mahala. It's free. It costs nothing. But it would mean the world to me if you would subscribe. So on that note, let me sign off and say happy reading, my friends. Bye.